Thank you for tuning in to Meaning Beyond Measure, a look between the staves. I'm your host, Ben Peterson. The purpose of this podcast is to dive deep into music, to share the story behind the sonnet, to explore the conundrums composers faced, and ultimately to discover new meaning in the music we make. In today's episode, we'll explore White Christmas. White Christmas still tops the charts as the best-selling hit single of all time. Over 50 million copies of Bing Crosby's rendition have sold worldwide, and there are over 500 other renditions of White Christmas by numerous artists and in multiple languages. So the combined sales of the song exceed 100 million copies. White Christmas isn't just one of the greatest songs of all time, though. One could reasonably argue that it's the greatest Christmas song ever written. The song paints an idyllic scene and stirs up fond memories of Christmases past. What composer could encapsulate Christmas so perfectly in just 54 words? Well, how about a Jewish immigrant from Russia? Irving Berlin was born in Siberia in 1888. He was originally given the name Irving Berlin. Berlin later said that he had no memories of his life in Russia, except one. He remembered lying outside on a blanket by the street while he watched his home burn to the ground. His family faced intense persecution just because they were Jewish. So his father, who was a cantor in the synagogue, decided to immigrate with his wife and 8 children to the United States. They arrived in New York when young Israel was just 5 years old. Berlin's father couldn't get a job as a singer in the local synagogue, so he worked instead at a kosher market and taught Hebrew lessons to support the family. But this meager income wasn't enough. To help support the family, Israel's older brother worked in a sweatshop. 3 of his sisters worked rolling up cigarettes in a factory. And when Israel turned 8 years old, he started selling newspapers for William Randolph Hearst. In 1899, the streets of New York City echoed with the voices of newsies. Poor orphans, runaways, and future composers, the newsies were a ragtime army without a meter, until one day all the keys changed. Yeah, so young Irving was a newsie, and he sold papes during the newsies' strike. In my research, I couldn't find definitive evidence that he danced while selling papes, but he did sing. Israel found that people were more likely to purchase a paper from him if he sang, and sometimes they'd tip him a little extra. But even that little extra wasn't nearly enough. The Berlin family, like most immigrant families, lived in destitute poverty. Young Israel often slept outside on the fire escape or even the rooftop. Their neighbors were also poor in means, but they weren't poor in hospitality. Israel's neighbors, the O'Haras, were Irish immigrants who scraped together what little they had each year to purchase Christmas goodies and a ragged Christmas tree. For Israel, a little Orthodox Jewish boy, the concept of Christmas was completely foreign, but he marveled at the lights twinkling from the O'Haras' magical Christmas tree. But the O'Haras wouldn't allow Israel to admire the Christmas tree from their window. They brought him in so he could experience Christmas in their home. Irving Berlin recalled their kindness with these words, quote, "I was a little Russian-born kid, son of an Orthodox rabbi living on the Lower East Side of New York City. I did not have a Christmas. I bounded across the street to my friendly neighbors, the O'Haras, and shared their goodies. Not only that, this was my first sight of a Christmas tree. The O'Haras were very poor, and later, as I grew used to their annual tree, I realized that they had to buy one with broken branches and small height. But to me, that first tree seemed to tower to heaven." Although the O'Haras had next to nothing, they freely gave so that this small Jewish immigrant could experience Christmas for the first time. The O'Haras shared the joys of Christmas time with Irving Berlin, and he grew to share the joy of Christmas with an entire nation. In the years that followed, Israel worked his way into the music business from the lowest rung on the ladder. He later changed his name to Irving Berlin, and eventually he became one of the most prolific composers in America. Then in 1840, while Berlin was composing for Hollywood, he felt a bout of homesickness. So he penned these lines as the first verse to White Christmas. The sun is shining, the grass is green, the orange and palm trees sway. There's never been such a day in Beverly Hills, LA. But it's December the 24th, and I am longing to be up north. Then followed I'm Dreaming of a White Christmas and the lyrics that we know and love. White Christmas was set to premiere in 1942 for the upcoming movie Holiday Inn, but everything changed in 1941 when Pearl Harbor was bombed. Life transformed overnight. The regular Christmas rush was displaced by a rush to arms. Tradition and enjoyment were replaced by terror and enlistment. On December 25th, just 2 weeks after the attack on Pearl Harbor, a special Christmas broadcast was sent to American troops with Bing Crosby premiering White Christmas. For a lot of soldiers, this was their first Christmas away from home, and the song perfectly blended a wistful longing for home, fond memories of Christmas past, and a blessing for better Christmases to come. The song struck a chord for these servicemen who were away, and also for their families who were home, separated from their loved ones. Irving Berlin perfectly expressed the nostalgia of a nation. His song was exactly what these lonely Americans needed. Throughout the war, the song's popularity grew. It acquired more fame at home, too, with the movie Holiday Inn. Even after the war ended, White Christmas was made into its own motion picture. It was evident that White Christmas was a timeless classic, a piece that would grow to spread joy the world over. Although Berlin's song brought joy to countless Americans each Christmas, Christmas was a difficult time of year for Berlin personally. On Christmas Day, 1928, Irving Berlin lost Irving Berlin Jr., his third child and only son. The baby was less than a month old. Somehow, Irving and his wife Ellen managed to make Christmas special for their 3 daughters, and they celebrate it each year. After the children left, however, the Berlins stopped celebrating Christmas. Irving Berlin retired from public life and became more reclusive as he aged. But one Christmas evening in 1983, a group of carolers gathered outside Berlin's door and sang White Christmas. When they finished singing, the maid rushed out to them and called, "Come in, Mr. Berlin would like to thank you." The carolers entered, and Irving Berlin thanked them. He reportedly said, "This is the greatest Christmas present I ever got." White Christmas, that song which brought so much joy to others, it came back to lift Berlin that Christmas. Both the Bible and the Torah share this scripture in Proverbs 11 verse 25. "A generous soul will prosper, and he who refreshes others will himself be refreshed." Berlin was refreshed that night, and for him, that Christmas at last was merry and bright. I hope that this holiday season is refreshing for you, and that you'll have the chance to refresh those around you. You don't need to write a hit song that sweeps the globe. It can be something simple, like sharing little things, or even sharing your holiday with someone, like the O'Haras did for Irving Berlin. Or you can sing carols together. You might provide refreshment through refreshments. I mean, trust me, no one's had too many Christmas cookies. It's simply not possible. However you choose to give this Christmas, rest assured that your goodness will create ripples of refreshment. As those ripples spread, we'll experience more peace on earth and goodwill towards men. And hopefully, in your times of need, some of those ripples will return to refresh and rejuvenate you. Merry Christmas. May your days be refreshing, merry, and bright. And yes, hopefully your Christmas will be white. I'm Ben Peterson. Thanks for discovering with me this meaning beyond measure.